Sunny Meadows Flower Farm here. I'm taking over the Gardener's Workshop Instagram and TikTok. Just wanted to share with you what's going on at the farm currently. We are in Columbus, Ohio, so we're in Zone 6B. The flowers are almost finished blooming for the season, so we're kind of transitioning to other tasks. You'll see some flipping beds and also some soil steaming, but just wanted to show you what we got going on here. This is our newest greenhouse. This is an old one from an auction that we bought. This is where we're going to be dividing tubers this year. It has white plastic over the top so that it's not getting direct sunlight in there. And we've actually got it set up, so let's show you. So underneath this row cover is lots and lots of crates of dahlia tubers. So we are finished digging tubers. We dig them into these crates from the field, and then everything gets organized in here. We cover these with row cover just to help with like airflow so that the tubers don't dry out too much, but also for exposure to sun. The top ones also we put sawdust in just so that they're not losing too much moisture. So these are dug but not finished. We don't wash our tubers when we're digging. We just kind of clean them off as we're dividing. And then finished tubers will go back into this crate in a bag with sawdust on top when they go into storage. So this tuber house is new this year. Previously we would store them in one of our other greenhouses, but we need that bay of the greenhouse to be greenhouse space. Especially we ran into a crunch where the tubers weren't out yet, but we needed space for crate lilies to be planted. And when we were thinking about space, building a greenhouse was a more affordable option than building a barn for us to divide tubers in. So right now the ground is just gravel, but the plan is for it to be concrete in the future so that we can move these pallets around easier. So right now everything is moved by hand, which is a lot of crates. I think we dug about 1,500 crates of tubers. We had 100,000 dahlias planted, so I think with the spring rains and the summer drought, we're going to end up with about the same number of tubers as we had last year when we finished dividing. So this here is a temperature sensor. So this is what the thermostats are connected to. We do have automatic roll-up sides. This one is closed on the sides, will be for the winter closed, but right now it can open and close. And they have a rain sensor as well, so that if the greenhouses are open and it rains, then the rain sensor closes them. So that was something that we started to do once we had 10 or so greenhouses, was automate them, just because it felt like we were spending our whole day opening and closing the side of the greenhouse and kind of managing the humidity and temperature in there. But that is the thermostat wire for that and for the heaters. So these here are tables, roller tables that we were using to unload the crates into here. Something that we buy a lot from auctions, and our neighbor across the street finds a lot of interesting stuff for us that we use. So we're always looking for efficiencies and systems, and also trying to figure out what else we can do so that it's less physical, work on our bodies, and make it easier. These crates, especially if it's muddy out when we're digging, are heavy to carry all these crates manually. So we just started dividing here today. I've been working hard on this system. This is a conveyor belt that's new to us, but again, something just bought used off of the marketplace, but they worked hard to get moving. So dividing tubers here in the station, and then dumping the compost down onto the conveyor belt. So here are some finished dividing tubers. These actually will be ones that we will pot up to propagate for us to sell dahlia cuttings, but also to increase the stock of our dahlias. So since we sell dahlia tubers And we also need to make sure we have enough for us to cut dahlia cuttings as a way for us to increase the inventory of the tubers by planting the dahlia cuttings as well. Our dahlia tuber sale just launched online, so we're just starting to get into this, know the numbers. And then the cuttings we don't launch until January because we want to pot these up and see how the plants produce before we like list the varieties. But yeah, that conveyor belt will be turned on, and then it's going to take the compost out the end here. So we put black plastic down in this area just so that it can be swept up, since there will create a lot of mud and dirt during this process. And then these are the wood sheetings that we use when we're putting them in the finished crates. So in the past, we also have gotten like sawdust from, there's a truss company close to us that has like big bags of sawdust that you can buy for like $5 for like a body bag size. And so we'll use that sawdust also, but if it's a little finer, then it kind of gets in the air, and so folks like to wear a mask if it's, you know, the finer stuff. This we like because it still helps to regulate the moisture within the tuber crate without you know, having so much like dust in the air. And that's also why we don't use vermiculite in the like storage process. It's just so that, you know, it's easier handling for everybody that's working through tuber time. So you can see where the conveyor goes out. So the idea is that the conveyor comes out here and is going to dump into a compost pile, and then we'll use the tractor to take the compost to the compost. So one of the pain points that we found with tuber dividing is that we use, you know, like recycling bins for our compost. Oh, they're going to turn it on. Ta-da! The guys have been really working really hard the past couple of weeks because everything we have is used, you know, just like making sure the belt works and like getting everything lined up and figuring out, yeah, how to build all of that. So got a lot of ingenuity here on the farm, which we're grateful for folks that, you know, contribute to that. As you can see, there's an old treadmill here, so we tried to use that belt for part of the conveyor, which didn't work, but we're always open to trying something if someone's got an idea. So this greenhouse here is where things were. There were marigolds and mums and things in here. We just cut through the end of a lot of those things. This is a heated house. We didn't turn the fans off in this house, so hopefully you can still hear me. But there were, like yesterday, marigolds in there. They've been ripping out a lot of beds recently. This is our first anemone, butterfly ranunculus, and this is actually the second planting of freesia. You'll see the first one in the other house. So this is a raised bed here that we made with just like old pieces of like barn roof metal, because as you can see, this walkway gets wet and kind of stays wet. So planting in the bed, we were having a lot of loss and disease pressure. So that's the only like kind of raised bed that we have. Everything else is, we call them semi-raised beds, but we basically will till the walkway and like dig the walkway out in the bed. So of our greenhouses, we have 20 greenhouses. Over half of them are heated, and that just helps us extend the season here in Ohio. So our season is about March through November, kind of into Thanksgiving. We did cut through, I think, the last of the flowers yesterday, and then now we're on to just kind of like cabbage. We've got some dusty and like sticks and berries, ilex and willow and things like that. We do holiday wreaths, and that will take us through December. And then the dahlia tubers selling online is kind of what helps with the winter like income, keep people year round, January, February, until the flowers start blooming again in March. We do have some pre-chilled tulips that we planted this year that maybe will be ready for Valentine's Day. But for us, what we found is that because we're getting the flowers go through November, the bed flip time to like try to have things for Valentine's Day can be pretty challenging, especially here we can be pretty warm in September. So if we've got we're planting cool weather crops, and it's in the 90s in September. Like hitting Valentine's Day can be a little bit more challenging here. All right, let's go into the seed house here. So this is the seed house. This is where everything gets started before it gets planted out. These are actually ranunculus from seed, which it's a new project. We'll see how it goes. I think the timing is a little off. And again, with the hot in September, I don't know if we could start them any earlier. So we're working on it. But you know, after 20 years of farming, we're still running trials and still figuring things out. And yeah, that's why we say farming will always keep you humble, because as soon as you think you've got everything figured out, something else will happen or something new comes up. But for us, that's also what keeps it interesting. If it was the same all of the time, you know, we would get bored. So we're always adding new crops and trialing things and figuring out new things in the repertoire. So we can walk down the row this way. Just watch the hoses. So the bench over there is a heated bench. It has a hot water heater that pumps the water through. So right now we're not, you know, starting a ton of stuff. That's why there's empty space in here. In the spring it will be bursting. That's some freesia that's getting started. We do sprout it before we plant it out, just to give it a head start, and because we plant it pretty dense, so it's easier to plant when you can see the plant. Our hoses we have on these overhead so that there's less hose on the ground. I mean, there still is some hose on the ground. And then these are trolleys that we move plants up and down with. So if we were pulling these trays to get planted, we could put these on the trolley and either send it down to that end or send it down here where it's getting loaded. So it's less like carrying plants. Or when they start seeds, if they need to put them on the bench like at the end, then they can use this trolley. All of this stuff in here was also used from auctions of greenhouses going out of business. So I feel like, you know, when we started, there were a couple greenhouses that we bought new, but a lot of the things have been kind of pieced together. So if what you're seeing, you're like, wow, that's a bigger scale than I expected, than I want to be, or that's a lot of fancy stuff. It's a lot of these things have been just through Steve's resourcefulness and our ability to kind of take things apart and put them back together, and pulling the inspiration from other farms, utilizing the trolleys and stuff. You know, we'll always try and figure out what we can do. So these greenhouse benches are rolling greenhouse benches, which came from a greenhouse auction. The auctioneer did not know how much they were actually worth, and he was just like, $20 a table or whatever. We're like, we'll take them all. But before it was just black crates with these tabletops on them. So yeah, so don't feel like this is too advanced, because we're still piecing stuff together here. This is some stock that's been started, some butterfly ranunculus. These over here are mum stock plants, so that is what we keep for our mum sales, and also to keep our mother plants, so that we've got our own supply going into next year. More butterfly ranunculus. These are holiday planters that we fill with soil before we put all the evergreens in them. This is the seed starting station here. We use a vacuum seeder, that's what these little vacuums are for. Has a little plate on it, which seeds the whole flat at one time. I know there's videos on our Sunny Meadows Flower Farm Instagram. But yeah, before we did the vacuum seeder, you know, we were kind of knocking the seeds off with the little seed shaker from Johnny's or whatever. And this, I feel was a big game changer for us as far as scale goes. So it went from, I think when we started using this, we would have 4 people spend all day seeding, versus 2 people can do, or one person can do all of the seeding with this seeder in that amount of time. Now the number of trays we planted has increased, so that There are times that we need 2 people seeding. There's times we're starting 100-something flats, you know, for the summertime. This is our flat filler. So we used to use loose bags of soil. Now we can use the bales because this helps break up the bales, and then they can send the flats like through the conveyor to be filled. All right. So this is the other bay of the greenhouse here. We've got our tuberose drying. These will be put into storage here soon. And this year we're kind of in a rebuilding year, so we don't have tuberose listed on the website, but we'll have more in the years to come. And then this whole bench here are all eucalyptus plugs. So this is part of the eucalyptus eucalyptus plugs that we sell with our live plants in the spring. And it also is what we plant out into the field. So we found, because we have to grow eucalyptus as an annual, that we want a bigger plant going out in the spring in the field to help it, you know, get ready in time before the end of the year. So, so we grow a ton of eucalyptus. We got a question? Oh, okay. All right. Let's see. There's a lot of other things happening in the greenhouse right now. That bay over there has kind of been project time, so we're saving seeds. We were sweating on the leaves off of ilex. We were stripping and bunching curly willow. So right now we're almost done with all of those projects, and then it will get turned into actually all the dahlias that you saw them cutting over there that are getting potted up into crates for propagation will go onto that table. So we're about to do a full clean out, sanitize, and get it ready kind of for the next step. So yeah, so lots of different kinds of eucalyptus. We actually added a couple different ones this year.
All right, we have a question. How do you keep the greenhouse warm?
So we have natural gas here, and most of everything that you've seen so far has been heated. We do have unheated greenhouses also, so we're gonna walk that way, and I can point out some of them out to you. So we definitely started with unheated houses. In the beginning, we were planting like spinach and carrots and kind of doing veggies in the winter, like Elliott Coleman style. And then found ranunculus and started with that, with flowers. So the unheated space is definitely useful to help extend the season, like if you're just starting, because you can get stuff, you know, for Mother's Day, have ranunculus in our zone, unheated, you could have ranunculus in April. So unheated space is definitely a beneficial tool to start with, and we're still utilizing that too. The heat just helps us so that we can overwinter more things like this eucalyptus or those like mum stock plants, and also have flowers in March. So the heated ranunculus is what blooms first thing in March.
They also want to know, what temps are you opening the unheated houses?
So we keep the unheated houses pretty cool. So what we're doing when we plant out the ranunculus, and we can show you one of the houses of ranunculus that's planted out right now. We want just a little bit of sprout, not a ton of green growth, because we don't want that foliage to die back in the winter. But we also don't want to have a lot of active growth. So if you have a lot of sunny, warm days in the winter and the plants reactivate, but then it's going to be cold again in January and they're going to kind of die off, we want to keep the temperature colder in there in the unheated houses. So I would say, I think that they vent at I think we vent them at 38 or something like that in the unheated space. And that also helps with condensation. So if you are sunnier and you're having a lot of temperature differentiation where it's cold at night and it's hot during the day, you're gonna get a lot more condensation, which can lead to botrytis if that moisture is dripping down onto the plants. So what we found by also keeping them cooler is that you're not having as much moisture issues in the greenhouse. So I think it also depends on how much sun you get. We're pretty cloudy here, but there's still days where it's 20 degrees outside and it's sunny, so you've got to vent the greenhouse. So we talk a lot in the class about ventilation, because I think that's one of the biggest parts of plant care, of growing over the winter. because it definitely helps with like disease management, with botrytis especially. But other things that we were experiencing were like downy mildew, not having sufficient airflow, and phytophthora and fusarium. So, which we talk about all of those in the class too. All right, let's go out and we'll show you the soil steamer out there. Loud, so I'll just show, maybe we can come over this way and show you what's going on. So the soil steamer helps to like sanitize, sterilize the soil basically. What we're trying to figure out is like that, which we had a grant when we got this soil steamer. We had two older ones that were used in like the tobacco industry and needed repiped when we got them and all of that. So we started out with those ones, which we've since like sold those off. Because a few years ago we got a grant to get a new one to basically like help understand at what temperature, for how long does it need to be held with our soil type here, and also for the crops we're growing and for the diseases that we're trying to manage. So steaming helps with weed management too, with the winter weeds, and that's what a lot of folks in the veggie world are using it for, is if they're growing salad greens. But for us, it was a way to help with like the soil-borne pathogens. Because these greenhouses now, we've been farming for 20 years, so some of them we've been producing for a long time. The plant material gets ripped out in between every use instead of being tilled in, and then they get steamed once a year in the winter. So you can hear the steamer going right now. The steam is going through these tubes into like a sock, basically, almost like a soaker hose like material. So that the steam goes all the way down the bed. The tarp, it has chains on the edge which is holding the steam in. So once it gets up to temperature, which we're going for like 180, the steamer gets turned off and then it's held at that temperature. So, you know, in order for us to find information about steaming, we had to go back to like the Fall Red Book that was like from the 70s. And the Dutch steam also, but they have very sandy soil. So just like trying to figure out how it worked for us, and like kind of what was transferable. So these were just ripped out a couple days ago, and now beds have been prepped and then soil steamed.
All right, we have another question.
Yeah.
Are you starting stock seed in week 49 or transplanting plugs? Same question for snaps in week 50.
Okay, so we start all our stock in snaps. They are ones that are more challenging for sure. We do not cover them with soil. I think that helps. And we also seed with stock. We seed 2 per cell, and with snaps we seed 3 per cell. And that helps. That's actually how they get planted out in the greenhouse, but that also helps if you have germination issues to make sure you're utilizing the like flat space. This is one of the unheated houses, so you can see everything's been killed back because we've had some 20-degree nights. This was marigolds for Dia de los Muertos, which it worked and it helped us make it through. These two here we call hoopties because the bows are 6 feet apart. This plastic will actually come off soon. It's only a 3-season house, so it helps us to extend the season. We built them for like our early Lysianthus, but then we were planting the Lizzies in the same beds over and over. That's when we started having disease issues and started rotating things. And because of how much Lysianthus we plant in the summer, that is why basically we have so many houses, so that things can rotate between those houses. So yeah, so this is another hoopty. We got some flowering cabbage in there, Dusty Miller. Some of the houses are empty, so we're just gonna kind of walk by. But this house here has the snaps and stock in it that we've been harvesting for Thanksgiving. And, you know, kind of post-frost. So some of them didn't make it in time for the holiday. I think that's part of It's hard sometimes to hit the timing. This is the same timing of the crop that did hit Thanksgiving last year, so it all just depends on the weather that you have also. But hopefully we can sell some orange snaps in December. We'll see what happens. And then this house here is where the ranunculus and stuff have been planted. So just to show you the like the kind of the size of the plants of us planting out. I feel like ranunculus is where most folks start with their flower growing in the greenhouse, because it's pretty tolerant of cold nights, and can handle a lot of different like climates. So we got butterfly ranunculus here, and then regular ranunculus. So this is actually a little bit further along than I would like for it to go. This house is it was an unheated house, and then we added one heater because we were like, well, we don't want to deal with row cover, putting them on and taking them off. You know, if you're covering with row cover, you do want to uncover on a sunny day like today so that they are getting, it's ventilated and they're getting sun. And once we had this many greenhouses, it felt like all we were doing all day was rolling up the sides and doing row cover. So we put one heater in here, but what we found this winter was that it's not big enough for this space. So when it got down to below 20 degrees, even with row cover in here, or like even, yeah, we needed row cover because this wasn't enough basically to keep it at temperature. So, and we've got sprinklers in here. We tried, you know, when we plant, we water everything in by hand. And since they planted so many beds at once, we used a sprinkler. I'm not totally convinced about that system. But you can see with planting, you know, we're laying this net down to give us the grid, basically, so that you're planting our rows, our beds are 6 rows across. So then that net gets pitched up, and then that way if we need to weed, we're like, you can use a hoe in there. And then for the things that do need netted, snaps and stock, lilies, things like that, we'll put the net back on when you need it. But we don't net our ranunculus. We found that the earliest planting of romance sometimes needs it just because they have longer stems. How are we doing on time? We can go in this house too.
Good, 2 minutes.
Okay. These fans were really loud though. Alright. This is a bed of Dusty Miller that'll be overwintered. We will cut it back to overwinter it, but we're still kind of cutting for Thanksgiving end of season. With the overwintered ones, it won't be ready for Easter, but it will be ready for Mother's Day. So we found that it's worth it to have some overwintered beds of Dusty just to have that foliage to go along with ranunculus and anemones in springtime. Oh, I did say something about the freesias, so let's walk this way and I'll show you the freesia. So these are beds that have been ripped out and prepped. You can see where we dug out the walkways, kind of making like semi-raised beds. And then freesia, ranunculus, stock, and snaps. So these were our first like plantings in here. The freesia will bloom in April-ish. We try to get it sooner, but sometimes it's hard just getting it in time again with the heat in September. So cool. Well, that is what's going on at Sunny Meadows right now. Let's walk outside since it's so So that's just a little piece of what's going on here. Our class right now for the Gardener's Workshop is on sale today through Saturday, $200 off, November 19th through the 22nd. You can see that on their website, on the Gardener Workshop website. And then currently with Sunny Meadows, our dahlia tubers are live for sale. And we do have on our page a page that's called For Growers that has all of our resources, articles that we've written, podcasts that we've been on, and lots of grower tips and tricks. So thank you for joining us. Happy winter time.